Welcome to Jagannath Puri and to the pilgrimage of the heart, where we'll be staying here in Jagannath Puri for several days and then going to Śrī Vṛndavan, right? Yeah. And while we're here, we'll have the opportunity for doing service in the dham together, and we'll also have the great privilege of staying in the place that is non-different from the Lord, and at the same time hearing about and appreciating and seeing the places where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates performed their divine pastimes. So before we have more kirtan and discussion, we could start with the Mangalacharna. Did you all get a songbook? Yes. I got a bunch of stuff at the door. Everybody's a winner here on this yatra. And it'll allow maybe whichever devotees are still coming down. I'd like to welcome Konteya Prabhu, a notable senior devotee of ISKCON, who apparently lives here in Jagannath Puri. And thank you very much for stopping by, and we welcome you to all the programs here. Hare Krishna. I just was talking to Madhavananda Prabhu and Krishna Kund, Mataji, who had got us started here many years ago with the yatras here in Puri, and they may stop in at intervals. They're very busy getting back, since they just got back to India recently. They were away, and wanted to express our appreciation to them for bringing us closer to Jagannath Puri through their association, since they live here and are deeply absorbed in the mood of Jagannath Puri. The gain is unwieldy at this point. Hare Krishna. So, if you'll find out where the Mangalacharna is, we'll do from the Śrī Chaitanya Charitamrita. 165. We should know that from the last yatra, which was 3 weeks ago, right? Why does this all seem familiar? 165. Is that the main harmonium for the whole yatra? Really? It's tiny. Even for outside. Straps, but does it have any muscle? Yeah? It's loud, okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Madhavananda Prabhu, for especially reminding us of the importance, the gravity of coming to the dham. It's mentioned, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his teachings to Sanatan Goswami, when he enumerated 64 items to be practiced in devotional service, the angas of bhakti. And then he said out of all of those, 5 are so potent that even if you don't have faith in them, and even if you only have a little contact, that your bhakti will flourish. And one of them is living in the holy dham. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you should always live in the dham. And if you can't be there physically, you should be there in your mind and heart. But how will you do that? My experience is that it's relationship, because the dham, Rajo Bhagavan Rajesha Tanayastad Dhāma Vrindavana, as an example, it's mentioned Krishna is the dham. There's no difference. Of course, he's everything, but he's especially the deity, and he's especially the dham. And when we come to the dham, when I come to the dham, I notice that They're unexpected events. We don't know when they're going to come, that's why they're called unexpected. However, they do come, and it may be just the way the sun hits the ocean and then you remember something, like Mahaprabhu throwing himself into the ocean and floating towards Konark and being fished out, literally, by a fisherman in his net. Or you may be jostled when you're trying to get darshan somewhere, and you'll feel a jolt of spiritual enthusiasm from the elbow of an elderly woman. And at first you may be stunned, and then you may think, I wish I had that kind of enthusiasm, the way Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had mentioned when an old woman climbed on his shoulder to have darshan of the Lord, one foot on the shoulder, one on the Garuda Stamba. And when Govinda, his Mahaprabhu's servant, had chastised her and said, get down, get down, get down! And then was offering her some choice words of free advice. Mahaprabhu interceded when he noticed what was going on and said, stop, you're an uncivilized person. He was speaking to his own secretary. And said, actually, I wish I had her enthusiasm. That might come. We don't see it anywhere else. Of course, we see people pushing to get into you don't see, into a baseball game. I don't see either these days, but we may see here and there, everyone has their own enthusiasm for something, but it's for petty causes. But here, everything is important. And if we have an experience here and it goes into our heart, that's permanent. You get to keep that. And of course, we have millions, trillions to the something's power of accumulated experiences. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Purusha prakritisto hi bhunte prakriti jangunan karanam guna sangosya sarasadyoni janmasu. Because of our sangha, our sanghas, the way we've associated ourselves over millions and millions of lifetimes, we've developed a nature. And why is that important? In the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, after Arjuna asks him, how can one think of you at the time of death? Antakali chamameva smaranutva kalevaram yaprayati samadbhavam yatinas yatta samshayaha. That if you've been absorbed in practice thinking of me, if you remember me literally at time of death, you'll attain me. But then he gives the caveat, yam yang vapi smaran bhavam tajatyante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kaunteya sadatad bhava bhavita. Whatever you remember, that you will attain. I always find that to be so philosophically astounding. As Prabhupada mentions, Sudhir, I think I need hot water. I remember being here before, same seat, drinking cold water, and then losing my voice. So if you can bring me hot, I'd appreciate it. Prabhupada mentions earlier in that chapter, I mean, how much earlier can it be? We're already only talking about the 6th verse right now, but Prabhupada mentions in his purport that it's the force of our own consciousness. By that force, material nature is accommodating us and giving us varied forms because of the nature of our own consciousness. So then Krishna says very practically, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanu smara yudyacha layarpita mano buddhir mami vaisyasya samshayaha. Therefore, you should practice while you're in this lifetime, even as you're working, fighting, whatever you're doing, to remember me. And one of the ways that we can remember Krishna is coming to the dham. One of the aspects of coming to the dham that is noticeable, I think, for me, and maybe you tell me if it is for you also, that you have to stop doing whatever else you're doing to come here, right? And you have to tell people, and they say, "You're going to go where? For how long?" And I always remember a friend of mine I used to travel to the Dham with, who had a business, and he said invariably the supplier who he would get cloth from that he was selling, she was nonplussed when he would tell her that he was going again to Kartik in India. She didn't know what Kartik was. Just was some religious thing. She was saying, "You can put how much money you're going to miss when you go there." I used to do it in her accent, but then I realized that I could be canceled for that. So, and he always remembered that, and that's part of it. We have to put down what we're doing and very intentionally come. And to some, it may seem to be a National Geographic tour or something like that, but for us, as we're called, the pilgrimage of the heart. And what is it about the pilgrimage of the heart? We want to touch the dham through our mood of service and be infused with a jewel that will go into our heart and that will stay there. And when we're able to collect those jewels over a lifetime, if we take some time, even if it's one time coming to the Dham, or even if we can't come to the Dham, as I've seen it in a couple places in Prabhupada's purports, where Narottam Das Thakur said, going to the Dham anyway, it's a kind of phantasmagoria, because most people go on a National Geographic tour. I say that over and over again because it's the same friend who tends to give a lot of free advice. I was taking too many pictures apparently at one time, and he said, "This is not National Geographic." And so, but there's a way in which, when we do have the experience, it goes into our heart as an eternal asset. And we know that this is one of the objectives of this life. As in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, when Parikshit Maharaj asked Shukadeva Goswami for advice, he says, Attain smriti. You have to be able to have the power, the spiritual power, to remember the Lord at the time of death. Krishna says it again in the 8th chapter, Prayana kale manasachalena bhaktya yukto yoga palina chaiva Guruvhara mandye pranamavesha samyak satam param purusham upaiti divyam. Said you have to at prayana kali, when you give up this body, you have to have yoga balena. And Prabhupada writes there, you have to have practiced some kind of yoga during this lifetime. He says sat chakra yoga, or another kind of yoga, but especially bhakti yoga. So also Śrī Īśopaniṣad, everyone knows the verse, vāyur anilam amṛtam, athedaṁ bhasmāntaṁ śarīram. Om krato smara kṛtaṁ smara, krato smara kṛtaṁ. Let this temporary body be burnt to ashes, and let the air of life be merged with the totality of air. Now, my Lord, please remember all my sacrifices, and because you are the ultimate beneficiary, please remember all that I have done for you. And in his purport, Prabhupada says, you don't have to remind the Lord. He knows what you've done for him. And one of the things you can do for him is come to his hometown. There are verses in the Bṛhat-bhāgavatāmṛta, they're so touching about coming to the Dham, those who come to the region of the district of Mathurā, and just they visit there. And Krishna takes it personally. He came to my hometown. After all, how does it feel somebody went to your hometown? If somebody hears from Coimbatore and I say Coimbatore, and they go, Coimbatore? Who said Coimbatore? I'm from Coimbatore. And so Krishna appreciates. In fact, there's a verse in the Prabhupada quotes in the Nectar of Devotion that Rupa Goswami obviously quotes. It says somebody comes to the district of Mathurā during Kartik, even if they're not very serious. But if they're serious enough or lucky enough to get on the train and get there for Kartik, and they just hang around, maybe offer a lamp. He said then Krishna takes that personally. This person came here. In fact, in Kartik time, which is coming up soon, a story about a little mouse who lived on the altar. Mice like they find little prasadam treats from time to time. You can see them every once in a while at altars. They just peep out and say, they're here. And one of them lived by taking the remnants of the ghee wicks, as they don't always burn down to the end. And there's a little ghee left, so this little mouse used to come out and take the last bit of ghee, and then one of the lamps was still smoldering, and when he was chewing on it, it got caught in his tooth, and then it reignited. So the little mouse, this is in the Kartik Mahatmya, the little mouse started jumping because he was being singed. And Lord Narayan was there on the altar, and he said, "Oh, Kartik, you're offering a lamp?" And the Kartik Mahatmya goes on to say how he took the birth in his next life as a very high-minded Brahmana. And in the next life he went back to Godhead. It's extolling the service of offering a lamp during Kartik. That's how appreciative Krishna is. If you show up, if you just go there, do something simple, a simple act of devotion, Krishna takes it personally. So all of you have dropped something back home. So the wheel never stops turning and the meter's running still. But you said, "I'm coming anyway." And that goes on your eternal record. But while we're here, we're able to, and we will, and we are, to absorb the mood of the Dham, to feel something, see something. That's ours to keep. It goes in the heart, and it's eternal wealth that's there forever, and that you can call upon at the most important juncture of life, which is just when you're breathing your last breath. That will be there as an asset. Thank you, Madhavananda Prabhu Krishna Kund. We'll see you on the marg. Hare Krishna. Regarding entering the Dham, I'll just recall the story of Sanatan Goswami. Sanatan Goswami, along with his brother, the Birkash Sakar Malik, names they had assumed in their service to the government at the time. One was Prime Minister, another was Minister of the Treasury. They were devotees even at home with the sizable fortune they amassed from their work. They had constructed a Nava Vrindavan. There are 10 of them now that are noted around the world. One of them's at the GEV. Another was, of course, in Dwarka, when Narada Muni asked the devotees to make a new Vrindavan there, because Krishna was feeling so much separation from Vrindavan. And then they had, that is, Rupa Sanatan had created a Vrindavan there, and they were hearing and chanting. When they heard that Mahaprabhu was nearby in Ramakeli with his minions, and festivals were going on, they went there in disguise, because they weren't supposed to be Hare Krishna. They were supposed to be dutiful ministers and working under a Muslim ruler, so they had to be discreet. And they went there, and their minds were changed about life. And we hear memorialized in the song by Srinivasacharya, Tyakvaturnamasesha Mandalapati Shrenim Sada Tuchavat. After they saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they said, "Forget this other stuff. It's useless. It's just chaff. I can throw it away. It's not worth anything. All the money and the fame." And of course, they weren't necessarily after that anyway. It was a matter of survival in the political situation that they were in. Nonetheless, they were so attracted to Mahaprabhu that, as you know, they made their way out of the government. Rupa Goswami took at least a year to wind things up and leave, and then Sanatan didn't get away so easily, as he was imprisoned by the Muslim ruler who was close with them. They were, after all, running his government, and he knew them well since they were young. And that's where the tradition that is so well kept in America, I don't know about other countries, of calling in sick came from. As Sanatan Goswami said, yeah, I don't feel well, I can't come in. But that went on for some time until the royal physician showed up and said, yeah, what do you got anyway? He went back to did this physician to the Nawab and said, he's not sick. He's reading Bhagavatāmṛta. He's hired brahmanas to come there to study the Shastra. That's what he's doing. So the Nawab there gave an ultimatum. He said, either do your work or go to jail. So Sanatan went to jail. He was able to get out because of paying off the guard, and then he met Mahaprabhu again in Kashi, and there he received instructions from him. And then later, after he went to Vrindavan on the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had come to Puri, and he took the route through the Jarikhanda forest. He had been fasting, and also, when we first came to India, there was no water. I can attest to that. The early days in India, kids, there was no water to drink. And I ended up getting amoebic dysentery several times coming to India because we had to drink something, and you just couldn't live on limca. Gets the pancreas involved, with the sugar and all that stuff. You need water, and there wasn't any water. There was no bottled water back then. And so, anyway, Sanatan Goswami, on his long journey to Jagannath Puri by foot, had gone through the Jarikhanda forest. He had taken water from wherever he could, and he got a disease which causes open sores on the body that ooze. And when he arrived in Jagannath Puri, he thought, what use am I? What use is this body? First of all, he said, I'm so unfortunate that I've contaminated myself through my employ, and I've also been fallen, drifted away from the culture, and now look at me. My body's so contaminated with these sores that if I touch somebody, I will create such an offense. They won't be able to do their seva. If I walk near the temple and one of the pujaris touches me, he was thinking that even before he was had contracted this disease, that I'm so fallen that if I touch somebody, they'll be contaminated. So his mood was extremely humble. When he came to Jagannath Puri, he asked around and found his way to the residence of Haridas Thakur, who, as you know, Mahaprabhu had given a special residence from which he could observe the chakra on the temple. As Haridas Thakur also, in his humility, would not go in the temple and probably would not have been allowed anyway. And Mahaprabhu then gave him a facility, and he visited him every day. After he would go for the morning puja, then Mahaprabhu would stop by Haridas Thakur's hut where he did his bhajan. Today I had called a godbrother who lives far away, and I said, I knew it was early in the morning there. I said, I hope I'm not interrupting your bhajan. He said, I don't have a bhajan. He said, I'm running scared just trying to finish my rounds every day. That's what I do. I don't have a bhajan. Haridas Thakur had his bhajan, and Sanatan Goswami showed up at his abode, and soon afterwards, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came there with some of his associates, and Sanatan and Haridas offered their Dandavata obeisances, and one of the devotees mentioned that there is Sanatan Goswami offering you obeisances. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had then forcefully embraced Sanatan Goswami, who had been reticent. More than reticent, he had physically backed off because he didn't want Mahaprabhu to touch his body. His body, he felt, was an abomination. He didn't want to contaminate Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu, though, out of affection, embraced him, and he invited him to stay there in Jagannath Puri with Haridas Thakur. They roomed together in that little kutir, and daily Mahaprabhu would come to visit them. But one day, when Mahaprabhu came, he said to Sanatan something that surprised Sanatan Goswami because he hadn't told anybody. That was that he had designs when he came to Puri that he would commit suicide. He felt so downtrodden about his condition, his fallen condition. And this is a symptom of spiritual ecstasy. Mahaprabhu mentions it when, in fact, he mentioned it to Sanatan Goswami. You'll find it in the Madhya Lila, chapter 20, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is instructing Sanatan Goswami, and he tells him that there are 9 symptoms of bhava. Bhava means a stage which is very advanced. It's past asakti. What's asakti? It means when you don't care about anything else, you're only attached to Krishna. And after that, the heart starts to soften. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentioned, it's like a ray of the internal energy touches the heart, he said poetically, and then the heart begins to melt and experience ecstasies. And so he had thought, and one of the symptoms, going back to the list of 9, is a devotee who's advancing thinks that he's becoming less qualified. He or she is becoming more and more unqualified. Although, as is pointed out there, such a person is becoming more competent and expert and qualified. But this is an element of advancement in devotional service also mentioned in the Bṛhat-bhāgavatāmṛta called dainya. And in fact, this dainya means utter humility, utter humility. And it accompanies, it is parallel to the devotee's advancement in devotional service. That is, there is no prema or love for Krishna without an equal amount of dainya or utter humility. They go hand in hand. So feeling like that, he had thought, what is the use of my life? And he thought, as he entered Jagannath Puri, that when the Rath Yatra ceremony begins, I will throw myself under the big wheel. And that ought to do it. If you've ever been there to the Jagannath Rath Yatra, that would probably do it, to get run over by that big wheel. And he said, in the before the beautiful lotus-eyed Lord, I will give up this body. So that was a private thought, very private thought. But one day when Mahaprabhu is meeting with Haridas Thakur and Sanatan, he said, by the way, I don't approve of your plan. What? If I could attain Krishna by committing suicide, I would have already done it millions of times. He said, this is not the process. He said, devotees oftentimes they feel they should die because of separation from Krishna. But in that intensity, then Krishna appears before them, and they don't commit suicide. He said, in any case, this is a product of the mode of ignorance. This idea to commit suicide, it's not approved by me. And Mahaprabhu went on to explain to Sanatan Goswami, he gave examples of advanced devotees who had mentioned the idea. For instance, Rukmini, in her letter, she had 8 prayers she sent to Krishna when she was petitioning him to marry her. And in one of them, she almost threateningly says, if you don't marry me, I'm going to perform so many severe austerities that, those austerities, somebody's so austere, they just diminish their body to nothing and then they pass away. I've seen it before, even in our movement. Some devotees have performed so many austerities that they've physically diminished themselves and even died. And so she said that, I'll do this until you accept me. That is, I'll perform such severe austerities that my body will dwindle, I'll give it up, and if it's not enough, then I'll do it the next lifetime. I'll do it for hundreds of lifetimes until you accept me. And Mahaprabhu cited this as an example of the intensity of the desire of a devotee to attain him. And he went on, did Mahaprabhu, and he talked about how bhakti is available to everybody. He quoted from Prahlad Maharaj, which is a topic we can bring up tomorrow more, because we'll be visiting Tota Gopinath. And one of the aspects of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar Pandit at Tota Gopinath is that they would hear Bhagavatam. And Mahaprabhu, when speaking to Sanatan Goswami, this is a nice conclusion to this vignette, said that actually you should give up your ku-buddhi, your bad intelligence, for trying to attain Krishna through some concocted method. In this case, jumping in front of the Jagannath car. He said, this is a bad idea. Not authorized. And then he said, rather, you should take to Śravaṇaṁ Kīrtanaṁ. What a foundational instruction at the end of that. If you start the process, what did he quote? He quoted, notably, everyone knows, from Nasadhyati mam yogo, na sankham dharma udava, na sadhyayas tapastyago yata bhaktir mamorjita. Hopefully you know that because it's on the test when we get back. And he said there's no other process needed. That don't think about other fancy ways to do this. It's just through pure bhakti, and that comes through hearing and chanting. He quoted from Prahlad Maharaj, where he said that Vipradvishad guna yatara ravindanava padaravinda vimukhat shvapacham varishtam manye chadarpita mano vachane hitarta pranam punati na kulamna taburimanaha. He said that even if somebody's very lowly, in fact he says a swapacha, somebody whose family during the holidays cooks a dog as a treat. If you're from that background, he said, no problem if you do Śravaṇaṁ Kīrtanaṁ. He said, but if you're a brahmana and you have all these Brahminical qualifications, but you don't have this intensity of purpose for hearing and chanting about me, then he said, the dog eater family member is higher. So it's a relief, as you don't have to do anything fancy. just plain old, straightforward Śravaṇaṁ Kīrtanaṁ. And if you can arrange for that, which is one of the treasures of coming on the yatra, is there's nothing else to do. You don't have any meetings to make. The internet doesn't work very well here at all. No matter how many dongles you get, it just doesn't go through. At least hasn't worked for me very well. And the only obligation you have here is to be there to hear and chant. And wherever we go, we do the same things, hearing and chanting. So entering the dham is a very fortunate situation that we're in, to come here to collect the jewels that go into our heart. The very first yatra that we performed, that we organized, and we afterwards had a retrospective. And one of the highlights of the trip was that one of the places we had stayed, one of the yatris complained because where was the room service? That became the emblem of our point of departure for improving the yatra. Not to get room service, but to frame the yatra in a different way, which was, this is a service yatra. We're coming here to serve the dham, coming here to serve the devotees. We're coming here to serve the ultimate purpose of life, which is to get ready to go back home, back to Godhead, and transfer our emotions from the temporary to the eternal, which we can do here quite handily in the dham. And now, before we go on and on, we'll take a few reflections or questions, just to get warmed up. Shankari Kaur, what a pleasure to see you. Hare Krishna. We're going to give you a mic, just like old times. 7 seconds, or you get a free laddu. It'll come.
Yes, so Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. After being shifted to Bangalore, I stay on 23rd floor, and all I see around myself is the concrete. And there has been a change of job role as well. And I was really thinking for the last few days that my consciousness is not there when I'm chanting. It's getting too rajasic. And so what am I supposed to do? What to do? And I got the answer just now. You don't have to do anything fancy, just Śravaṇaṁ and Kīrtanaṁ. And let's not, down the bar over there. If we keep our goal standards of hearing and chant Śravaṇaṁ and Kīrtanaṁ, everything is going to stay in its place. We don't need to worry about where we are. So thank you for that.
So I think we lost something. Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. There's some book, it's called The Paradox of Choice. What's that called? Something about the more choices you have, the more options you're given, the more difficult it is. I think it's called The Paradox of Choice. That's what it's called? I experience that all the time. And on the other side, there's Occam's razor, which says that the simplest answer is usually the best. The answer with the fewest assumptions is the best. And having a clear idea what's most effective, what's the main thing, and then going back to the main thing is very helpful, isn't it? One verse that came to mind when you mentioned that was the last verse in the 8th chapter. Vedeshu yajneshu tapasu chaiva dhaneshu yat punya palam pratishtam adyeti tat sarvamidam vaditva yogi param stanam upaiti chadyam. Krishna says if you do devotional service, it's one of the main points of that chapter, you're not going to lose anything else. All the Vedic study or the giving in charity, tapasya, things like that. If you do devotional service, you won't lose any of that. Everything's there. Many verses like that. They're good to keep in mind. and that everything's available by simple hearing and chanting. And Prabhupada had commented several times in his correspondence to disciple. He said, I heard it once in a letter to Jagannath Prabhu, and I saw it once elsewhere, and I forget who it was to, but Prabhupada said, it's the same old answer, chant Hare Krishna. Same old answer. Thank you. Okay, a couple more. Reflections or questions? Yes. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Śrī Radha Govinda Dasi, welcome. I think it takes a second to come on.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for the class. This Kubuddhi Chariya, I was wondering if you could elaborate on that based on practical situations. What would it mean? I mean, I'm not planning to put myself under the chariot to die. That's not my Kubuddhi. So, but I have other kinds of Kubuddhi. So I was wondering if you could elaborate, and what would it mean for a practicing devotee struggling to chant that example you gave of the devotee godbrother who said, running scared to finish my rounds, that level I am at. What would it mean, Kubuddhi, and what can I do practically to...
Well, in some ways, like there's an old saying, don't try to be more Catholic than the Pope. Sometimes there's a sense that it's not fancy enough, what I'm doing. It's not elaborate enough. There's not enough mantras. There's not enough mudras. There's not enough rice flying around the room. Whatever it might be, if you go back to what's essential, after all, there's a yuga dharma. And if you take that and you take the essential parts, especially it's helpful to take from, when you have a founder acharya, you're really lucky. You can go to some very beautiful and vibrant places where people congregate to worship the Lord, and you'll notice they don't have a vyasasana and they don't have a founder acharya sitting there. I've seen that in many places. I don't know if I should mention any names. Well, the Radha Govinda temple in Jaipur. I mean, you're not going to find a more enthusiastic crowd for Mangal Arati. There's 3,000 people. And when they put the lamp out, you almost get crushed because everyone goes, whoa. But still, I don't see Founder Acharya sitting there. So, in the Bṛhat-bhāgavatāmṛta, the demigods praying to Lord Krishna within the womb, they give this simple formula where they say, Tvat-pada potena mahat-kṛtena kurvantiko vatsapadam bababdim. And that is that find the mahat. Who's the great devotee in the room? Who's the great devotee who's representing the sampradaya and who's been empowered to do so? And then find the mood and method of that great acharya. And just practically, Prabhupada had a very distinct mood and method of how to perform devotional service, which can be discerned by associating with those who had association with Prabhupada, or those who associated with the Prabhupada. The cyclic succession is still around in such a way that you can pick up that mood and method. And then, of course, you can read his books and find his mood. When we were in Kartik, we read the whole third canto. And you definitely are left with a sense of, this is what Prabhupada's mood is when you read a whole canto, just over, 3 weeks. So it's finding what are the essential values of the founder Acharya Upasanam, and worship that, and keep to that. And if you do that, you find out what are the most important elements and the most recommended moods, and you try to adhere to that, then you'll be successful. That's what pada potena mahat-kṛtena means, that if you can ascertain what is the methodology of the mahat, the great souls, the acharya, and you can emulate that, then it says, Padapo Kritena Kurvanti Govatsa Padam Bhavabdim. The indication is that you have to cross the ocean of material existence, so you need a boat. And the boat is the method, mood and method given by the Acharya. But it's so powerful that, as the next verse says, that if your intention is to get in the boat and follow it, then the ocean shrinks. You can just step over the ocean because it got so small, it fits within the hoof print of a calf. And that's how powerful it is to emulate the mood of the founder Acharya. Not make up something fancy or try to add something extra. Just take it straight. Does that help? Okay, perfect, works. Okay, two more. Gopal. Nice to see you here in Jagannath Puri, or anywhere else for that matter.
Prabhu, can you explain a little bit about the mood of Sanatan Goswami honoring the leftover or rejected Jagannath Prasad?
Was it Sanatan, or are you thinking of Raghunath Das?
Okay, sorry, Raghunath.
Why, you want to do that? I mean, his mood, first of all, he came from a billionaire family, and he was done with it. He wanted out. That's telling in and of itself. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach renunciation. Of course, the form of renunciation is important to understand because it doesn't mean to copy Raghunath Das at Goswami and eat rejected prasadam rice that the cows wouldn't eat. In fact, it requires well thought out renunciation, which is properly applied. Anasaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjita nirbandha krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyamuchite prapanchikatya buddhya harisambandhi vasuna mumukshavo prikyago vairagyam palgukatyate. If you renounce improperly, it's known to be palgu vairagya. It's superficial. As an example of how Krishna tries to, I'm taking a roundabout way of answering your question, it's philosophical. In the story of Sudama Brahmana, his wife was actually afraid to bring up the topic because her husband, Sudama, was so renounced. He wouldn't ask anybody for anything. And he only accepted whatever people gave him without asking. And they were poor. And she also knew that his mood was he wouldn't ask anything from Krishna because he was a pure devotee. So she didn't want to bring up the topic that, why don't you go talk to Krishna? You were in Gurukul together. Her purpose was that she wanted to serve her husband. And she wanted to see him get what he needed. And her being able to facilitate that. So she brought it up. Hey, remember? You went to school with Krishna. When he left, of course, he took some borrowed rice from a neighbor. They didn't even have enough rice for him to take a little portion to offer to Krishna. And his experience there was overwhelming. He met with Krishna in Rukmini's palace. And Krishna had worshipped him. And the next day he set back for his homestead, and on the way there he was grateful to Krishna for not having given him anything, apparently. And when he got back, he then gradually realized that his life had changed because his wife looked like a demigoddess and his home had transformed from a little ramshackle shack into a palace. He had more opulence and wealth than Indra. And that also he didn't become attached to. Now there's important philosophical points that go as an answer to your question. Krishna, in this case, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, had adjusted Sudama's sense of renunciation because he was attached to being renounced. And therefore he had put upon him this wealth to show him that he was safe in devotional service even when he had great wealth, and that he could still have heartfelt devotional service even with the wealth. And what really changed his heart, Sudama's heart, was that Krishna was so touched by the small offering that he had brought, even reluctant to give it to Krishna. Krishna had to snatch it from him. Krishna was so touched that Krishna thought, I couldn't repay him for that. There's nothing I could do to repay him for that. He said, I'll give him all the wealth of the universe, more than Brahma and Indra. He said, but that wouldn't be enough. In fact, Krishna felt embarrassed that he couldn't give him enough to repay him for that little bit of rice, the one palmful. And that's what really changed the heart of Sudama. My point is that everyone has a way to adjust their intentions so that they're in line with serving Krishna properly, or wholeheartedly, I should say. Properly is not a very nice word. Wholeheartedly, so they can wholeheartedly serve Krishna, and that's real renunciation. When one's intention is towards, I want to see Krishna happy, and whatever condition, whatever external situation one's in is inconsequential, because the real consequence comes from one's intention that I want to serve Krishna with whatever facility I have. And in the case of Raghunath Das, coming from the situation he was in, his family was as wealthy as Indra. And he had left that behind, and Mahaprabhu encouraged it. He didn't always encourage it in every circumstance. Everyone has an individual circumstance that Krishna helps to adjust, and helps that person to adjust it so that they can be fully in resonance with this idea of giving everything to Krishna. As an example, there's a way in which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had asked Shivananda Sain to look after, I'm trying to remember his name, Vasudev Dutt, who's famous for saying, I will suffer for all the sins of all the living entities forever, and just let me stay in the material world. And meanwhile, he was a grihastha, and he didn't have a good way to manage his affairs and his wealth. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you help him to manage his financial affairs. So that there's not any one exact adjustment that applies to everybody. Raghunath Das was one of the devotees that Mahaprabhu wanted to show as an example to the world about the power of bhakti, vairagya vidya nija bhakti yoga. He came to teach that, vairagya, that a billionaire's son who could live on Easy Street for the rest of his life, he didn't care for it. And he didn't care for it in stages, that in the beginning he was using his money to serve Mahaprabhu and the devotees. He was putting on big feasts regularly. And then Mahaprabhu asked one day, what happened to the big feasts? It's like, oh yeah, he doesn't do that anymore. He doesn't want to even touch the money coming from his family. He said, what's he doing now? He's begging outside the Shimadwar gate. And then it's like, what happened? He's not doing that anymore. He said, yeah, he thought of himself as a prostitute, thinking maybe that guy will give, maybe that. And then he was begging at these, or not begging, they give out free food, and he wouldn't take that anymore. So what's he doing now? He goes clandestinely and he takes the rice that the cows won't eat. he carefully washes it off till there's a little kernel inside, and that's what he keeps in a tiny little pot. Which, by the way, when Mahaprabhu saw it, he said, "Why have you been hiding this nectar from me?" Swarup Damodar wouldn't let him take it. He said, "That's not for you." That's how austere it was. So we should have, in conclusion, a refinement. We should attend to the refinement of the way in which we see that our full intention is towards serving Krishna and his devotees with no selfish desire. Anyabhilashita shunyam. Is that all right? Okay, one last one. Malini. Thanks for coming, and boy, do we have some book distribution for you here.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I really like the point that you mentioned about if an experience in the dham enters your heart, you get to keep it. I was thinking about this for the last few days. I've been going around. One of the places that I went in Kolkata, the birthplace of Srila Prabhupada, there is a small temple where his father used to go on a regular worship. So there is a deity of Madan Mohan there. So I thought like that was Radha Govinda. Maybe now it's Madan Mohan.
No, there's two temples. One's Radha Manomohan and the other is Radha Govinda.
Oh.
Well, one of us is the one where Prabhupada has grain ceremony, and it's his maternal. That's the other one. That's Radha Madan Mohan. And the one that's on the busy street where Prabhupada used to live and go as a child, and he'd see his father ringing. That's Radha Govinda. Sorry, go ahead.
So when I was taking darshan, the pujari was doing some service for somebody else. But as soon as I went, he actually came out and to explain, this is Radha Madan Mohan, and right next to it there is another altar where there are Radha Govinda deities also. There are two there. So, I mean, just the fact that he came out to explain to some new person, that experience actually stayed in my heart, so I would never forget that. So I was also thinking that many new people come to our temples, even in different areas where we are from. So that experience that if we create for them, that's probably will stay in their heart and make them want to come again and again. So I was just thinking that these are some things to collect in the dham as well.
Thank you. This is really nice. Okay, can't hold back. So we burned through almost 2 hours, and we have a few minutes left. So we haven't really had a kirtan. So we'll have a little kirtan, and then we'll have some announcements about housekeeping and procedure for the book distribution, for the parikram, for taking Jagannath Prasadam. Jagannath Prasadam is the main feature of Jagannath Puri, just as the dust in Vrindavan is the main feature there, and Harinam Sankirtan is the main feature in Navadvip. So, with Jagannath Prasadam, generally when one honors Jagannath Prasadam, one sits on the bare floor, no fancy seat, and with deep devotion. It's not a casual thing, but it's something to meditate on, taking the prasadam of Lord Jagannath. And in fact, here the tradition is that after taking Jagannath Prasadam, they don't wash their mouth and then spit out anything. They make sure all the prasadam goes down. And one of the famous pastimes here in Jagannath Puri was, of course, with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who had wanted to not only instruct Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but try to elevate his sannyas status. And then, of course, truncating the story extremely, there's a way in which he then discovered that Lord Chaitanya was God, who in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Mahaprabhu remarks, do you still want to try to elevate my sannyas status? After he revealed that he was the Lord himself. And the next day, when Mahaprabhu had gone to the early program at the temple and came to see Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya after his conversion, that was the sign that his heart had completely changed into a Vaishnav from being a Mayavadi. And that was that he got up from bed or without washing his hands or doing any of the other rituals that smartas do when he was addicted to those. He simply immediately honored the prasadam. And the verse was, Nadesha niyamastatra nakala niyamastata praptamanam dutam shishya bhoktaram hara bravit. That wherever prasad comes from, you should take it immediately. And then Mahaprabhu said, now it's certified. His heart has changed. The prasad's so important. The room is noticeably beautiful. Thank you for all of you that helped to put together this magnificent arena with the posters, a labor of love, all of the decorations, the lighting, weeks and weeks of work to create this atmosphere. And now I'd like to give special notice to Shraddha Devi Dasi, who works on the yatra for 365 days every year. And then somehow or other in the last few months before the yatra, squeezes another 365 days into 3 months, but works tirelessly and is more attentive to detail in important ways than anyone that I know. So I'd like to thank and welcome her to come up here and tell us what we've won. Yeah, I mean, I can't remember what time we talked about starting, but one thing is we're going to have Tulsi Puja we'll set Tulsi up, we'll sing in unison the Tulsi prayers, and then, because we're worshiping a picture of Tulsi, then during the day, you can find a place to water Tulsi. There are plenty of Tulsis around, and you can organize freely for that. And that way, we'll have a way to worship Tulsi, but it won't be an elaborate or long ceremony.